Our star guest today was born in Kenya and moved to the UK at the age of 4. Her career started as a voice actor in radio drama, where she won the Carlton Hobbs BBC Radio Drama Award back in 1984. But it wasn't long before television called, and by 85 she was appearing in such programmes as Brookside, Bergerac and Poirot. But it's probably as Sandy in BBC television's As Time Goes By, alongside Judy Dench and Geoffrey Palmer, that she's most fondly remembered. And I'm very pleased to say she's joining us on the programme now. Jenny Funnell, welcome to Community Connections.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's lovely to be here.
Jenny, you were born in Kenya. Were the family based out there at the time?
Yes, they were. My mum had been, she was a nurse and she got a contract with Dutch Shell, who sent her all over the world, really nursing. And she ended up in Kenya. And my dad was out there as a company secretary for Balfour Beatty, and they met at a cocktail party. And sort of the rest is history. So they got married out there. My twin and I were born out there, but it was never going to be a long-term thing. So then the dad was brought back, his company back to London. So we moved. And I've not been back since, which is a shame.
Would you like to? Is there a yearning there to go and see what it's like now?
Yeah, my sister and I both want to go. My dad never wanted to revisit. He wanted to remember it as he knew it. My mum wanted to go back, but sadly she's no longer with us. So there is a part of me that would like to go back. Yeah.
You were one of twins. Were you very close? Were you very similar?
Yes, we're not actually medically identical. I didn't realize there was a difference. We had our own egg each, but we were so similar. I mean, at school they made us wear labels, to identify us. And my dad still on the phone, he still didn't know who was phoning. He used to try and ask questions to find out which twin he was talking to. But yes, we are. We're very similar. We look different now because my sister's got very long hair, but yeah, you'd know we were related, definitely.
Did you ever get the temptation to swap and pretend you were the other at any point, playing tricks when you were younger?
I did. I lived as a nurse at the Royal London Hospital as her for 3 months when I had nowhere to live. So she trained as a nurse, and as a nurse in training, you had to live in the sort of the nurses' halls, and there was a very strict policy, a matron on the door. You couldn't have guests after 10. And I was commuting from home when I was at drama school, and the trains kept being, delayed because of the weather. So my twin said, "Look, here I've got a spare cape and a hat. Why don't you come and just stay on the floor in my bedroom?" And I did for 3 months. I mean, I'd go in, they'd say evening nurse. I accepted so many parties with lovely doctors on her behalf. And finally, we were caught both coming out of the bathroom by a cleaner who actually called me aside and said, "I know that your sister's been living with you." And I just said, "I know, I can't get rid of her." But anyway, so that's how similar we were.
So your sister became a nurse, you went into the acting profession. Was it
Yes.
something that you had an urge for right from a young age?
Yes, and I don't know where it came from. Um, my mum, as I said, was a nurse. My dad was very musical, but and very good with his hands. He was a fabulous carpenter. But nobody in the family were, in the theatre business. So I don't know where it came from. They always took us to the theatre and to concerts and live events. So maybe it was from that. But I always wanted to be Peter Pan from the age of about 4, and it's always been with me.
You went to drama school and you were really successful there, weren't you?
I was very lucky. It was wonderful. I mean, then it was a very important competition, the Carlton Hobbs, because then you could not work without an equity card. And each theatre at that time only had about two equity cards to give each year. And so there was this competition for all the drama schools, and they gave one female and one male prize, and you got an equity card and a 6 months contract with the BBC. And I was lucky enough to win it. And it really started me. I mean, it was great because it meant I had the equity card and I could work.
You've done television, you've done radio, you've done theatre, you've done a lot of different types of performance. Did you start then in the theatre? Is that where your roots come from?
Yes, because actually, although I was meant to take up the contract for the Carlton Hobbs, the radio award, straight away after drama school, I was then lucky enough to audition and I was offered the part of Ophelia in Hamlet up at Theatre Clwyd. And so the BBC were really sweet. They allowed me to go up there and I did my contract with them the year later. So theatre was my first job and it is still my first love. I mean, I love all the genres, but with theatre, you get to actually play the whole part in one night. With filming, it's all chopped up and you're filming out of order. It's just a fantastic challenge, and I find it really exciting. Nerve-wracking, but exciting.
You had won the award. You then went to tread the boards for a while. How did you then get back into radio drama? Because that's where you were noticed once again.
Absolutely. Well, that was because I then took up the 6-month contract that was the prize for that competition. And during those 6 months, I mean, radio drama, it's not what it is now, which is really sad. They've cut and slashed so many programs. But it was a fantastic training ground because in those 6 months, I was doing Chekhov, I was doing Shakespeare, I was doing new plays, I was working with people like Maggie Smith, Alan Rickman, Juliet Stevenson, all on the radio. And I met various people through that and got television jobs came up as a result of that, just from connections. And it also, it's a great discipline because you've only got your voice to rely on. So you really have to do your homework and be grounded in the character. And I love it because you're not typecast.
There's an interesting point you made there about working with these great names on radio. I sometimes think that these days there is much more of a silo. People are either in radio or in television within the acting profession. Do you think that's the case?
Yes, I do. I do think that. I mean, there is that. I mean, I have lots of friends who I've done voices for video games with and sort of cartoons and various things, and they call themselves voice actors, and they make a very good living out of it. Well, perhaps not so now. The world is changing, but they did at the time, and they called themselves voice actors. So there is a kind of sort of divide of people who tend to do that more than anything else. Um, Both are equally rewarding.
When you moved to major more maybe in television, you actually landed some roles in very, very big shows quite early on. I mean, Brookside was watched by half the population back then. Bergerac is looked upon with such love. And Poirot, playing alongside
Oh,
Mrs. Suchet, three incredibly different dramas, but what a start.
it was a lovely start, and the Brookside was the first job, and I was playing a little Welsh girl called Dilys Parry, but it was a really lovely part. Wonderful director, a man called Bob Carlton. I don't think he's with us anymore, but I'm thankful for him for giving me that opportunity because nowadays the way casting's going, they would only cast somebody who is actually Welsh. So I was able to do that, and then yes, as you say, then I did. I had a nice week in Jersey with Bergerac, driving around in a little Mini. Um, and then Poirot, and that was wonderful. And I've since worked quite a bit with David Suchet on radio, but I really loved the Poirot. That was such fun and such a great team. And I'd always watched them, and to suddenly be in one was a real excitement for me.
Three very different roles, but is the discipline needed for each type the same, or does your approach vary?
The approach is pretty much the same. I mean, you get to know your character, you find out where they're from and what each attitude is in the scene. So that stays the same, really, regardless of the character. But then you become I don't know. Sometimes, well, with me anyway, I'm quite instinctive. So I suddenly find as I'm reading the lines or learning them that a gesture will come out, and I think, oh, that's her. There she is. She's coming. And that then I'll sort of develop that, and then suddenly you realise you've got that person as a whole, and that's the joy. And more so then you were allowed to play, or rather, you were cast in many more different roles. Now I think typecasting is much more across the board. People are, dare I say it, you get put in a box much more these days.
You have done so much in your career. Certainly, nobody can put you in a box. But Jenny, I think there
Mm.
is one role that you will be forever loved. And I said to you the moment we started speaking before we recorded, your voice just took me back to those Sunday evenings sitting at home the day before going back to school with As Time Goes By, not
Yes.
only one of the most remembered and most loved series of probably the last 4 decades, but again, playing with those who were the cream of the crop at the time.
That to me was just wonderful, and I remember the interview very very clearly with Sydney Lotterby, our wonderful director. I was actually playing at Windsor Theatre Royal. We were in the Norman Conquest. I was playing Annie, so they had to see me early so I could get the train for the evening's show. And I remember I had a backpack that I carried instead of a handbag, and I remember going into TV Centre and reading the scenes with Sydney Lotterby and Laura Scott, the casting director. And at the end, I had to leave. And as I was leaving, Sydney said to me, well, I think we'd better give you the job so you can buy a better handbag. which I just remember. And it was to me, I was over the moon because I'd always admired Judy. I'd always seen her in the theatre. And in fact, I had a fan letter that I wrote to her when I was 14, when I'd seen her at the National, and she wrote back to me. And when she spoke at our wedding, she did a lovely sonnet. I was able to show her that letter, and she was absolutely amazed that, and I was so grateful to her. But to work with both of them, I learned so much about comic timing and just how to be. Geoffrey and Judy are, they work completely differently. She's very instinctive. He's very his script was marked up with all the close-ups, all the camera moves right at the very beginning. He's very technically minded, but both were fantastic. And I have to say, I think the reason why it was so successful or so loved, really, let's say, is because we had the same writer, the wonderful, glorious Bob Larby, for the entire 10 series. We had the same director, the lovely Sydney Lotterby. We had the same crew, the same wardrobe, camera, everybody. So we were a big family and we all knew how each other worked. And it was a huge joy. I mean, it really was. It wasn't like going to work. It was just like spending time with old friends.
I was astonished reading up for this interview that there were 58 episodes. You were in all of them.
Yes. I mean, it's extraordinary. And do you know, Andrew, at the very beginning, it wasn't called As Time Goes By. The series was going to be called Winter with Flowers. That's what we were booked to do, the very first series. And I remember Judy and Geoffrey saying, when we were filming the last episode, before it had gone out to the public, they said, "This is such a terrible title. We have to have a better title." And thank God they did, because I understand the Winter with Flowers, the winter, the romance of them meeting later on in life. But As Time Goes By was a much better title. And yes, I thought I was only coming in for that first series because I was Judy's secretary. And then I remember much later on, Bob Larby was always in the rehearsal rooms and he would write for us as he got to know us. And suddenly I was written in as a member of the family, even though I wasn't actually. And it was such a lovely job.
You've picked up one of the questions I wanted to ask there. How much were you able to bring yourself to Sandy?
Quite a bit. I mean, because of the way Bob wrote, he would watch. And I remember telling a story. I was just moving into a flat. And I remember saying, and Bob was listening, I said, I couldn't bear leaving it because I'd had happy times in the flat. And I said goodbye to every room. And he wrote that in. So when I was helping Geoffrey, when Sandy rather was helping Geoffrey to move out of his flat into Jean's house, he had Sandy turning back saying, "Goodbye, little flat." So he did use a lot of, and also you're able to bring yourself to it because you're not playing a character who's so different to you. So it was wonderful.
We look back on those years with great fondness. When you were coming towards the end and the series was naturally coming to the end of its story, how did that feel? It must have almost felt like a bereavement.
It did, and actually, the we thought it was finishing in series 9. And we had a big party and we all said goodbye and it was all very tearful and then we were all brought back for the reunion specials, which was lovely, but it did feel we didn't want to be the kind of series that goes on and on and on and people say, oh, it's not like it used to be.
Hmm.
And then I have to say, because it was bought by a company. It was made for Don Taffner Theatre of Comedies. He's an American. They did want us to make many more. They wanted us to make another series, a sort of Christmas reunion where we all sat round a grand piano, talking about carols and all in our characters. And Geoffrey very firmly said, over my dead body, I'm not doing that. And I'm very grateful for that. And also by then we'd lost Bob Larby, our wonderful writer. He died just after the reunion specials and it would not have been the same because nobody could write those characters like he did. He knew them.
You were right, when you mentioned Sid Lotterby and Bob Larby, they teamed up on so many. The Good Life was theirs as
Yeah,
well, probably one of their earlier ones. And now you've said that, and I'd never thought this before, there was a lot of the style that came over into As Time Goes By, and it was a very cozy drama. Maybe the sort of things that we are missing somewhat on television these days.
I think so. I think, I get so many letters still which touch me of people who said that I loved As Time Goes By. I still watch it. It gets me through dark times or times of sorrow. People see it as a sort of comfort blanket. And I think if you look at most of those episodes, nothing very much happened. Most of the time we were in Jean and Lionel's house, and it was just the five of us. but I think its real strength was that you got to know and love the characters. So it didn't really matter. You didn't need to have a big dramatic episode or a car chase or anything like that. It was about those people and their idiosyncrasies, and because you grew to know them and love them, it worked. And I think I can't think of anything. Well, Gavin and Stacey, I think, was a bit like that. I loved all those characters, and that was very much about them, although there was much more drama there. But I think it is. I can't think of anything really that's like that because I don't think people would be brave enough to just do something which is just really set in the one room anymore.
Now, Jenny, as time goes by, it still plays a big part of your life now, but not actually the television series. Tell us about this latest, which sort of combines acting, your television memories, and one of the world's greatest cities.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yes. Well, my mum, when she retired as a nurse, she did city guiding. She took her badge. Um, a long time ago, and I'd always been interested. Had I not been able to go down the drama school route, I would have done history or archaeology at school. I've always loved it. And it actually happened. My daughter had bought me a ticket to go around the Bombay Sapphire Gin distillery. And the lovely chap who was guiding us was terrible because he turned his back on the group. You couldn't hear him. And I kept thinking, you could make so much more of this. You've got an audience. And then I started to think about the City of London guiding course, which is hugely oversubscribed. Then I thought, well, I might as well just apply. And luckily, then we had the pandemic. I don't mean luckily, but I had time, to do that. And so that's how it happened. So I got accepted on the course, did it, and started guiding. And then I thought, it's time now I set up my own company. And it's just me, but I called it As Time Goes By London. And I update my website when I can remember how to do it. I'm not very technical, but it's wonderful, and I do get a lot of visitors from America and Australia who come because of As Time Goes By. But they also love history. I do get asked to take them on a location tour, which is completely impractical because we're all over London and Hertfordshire. But it's wonderful, and I do love it. It marries, as you very rightly said, acting and knowledge and a wonderful city.
Do you also, as well as those Americans that are coming over, do you also have people that put two and two together as you're going around and suddenly see the recognition? And that must be rather lovely.
Yes, it is, because I would never say it. I never say anything. And halfway through, I've had sort of maybe people look and say, you really remind me of someone. I can't think of who it is. And then they say, you're very like that girl or that woman on As Time Goes By. And I will say, well, actually, it is me. And it's lovely because some of them are quite shocked, but in a good way. So it is very nice because it's just that slow sort of dawning. But some people haven't got a clue, which is equally fine.
We are so quickly coming towards the end of our time, which I'm really sorry about because it's been absolutely wonderful. It's taken me back a few years, I can tell you.
Oh, I bet.
Apart from the tour guiding, are you still doing acting or television work at
Yes.
all?
I'd love to be doing television work. I haven't got any television work in the pipeline. The last thing I did was about 18 months ago, but I am very much still acting. Obviously, if I get a theatre tour and I'm away, then I have to sort of just pause the guiding, but that's okay. People who book me on the website know that that's something that may happen, although hopefully it wouldn't. And at the moment, I'm recording a series of audiobooks. I have a little home studio downstairs. It literally is a home studio. It's underneath my daughter's old bunk bed, but my husband built it. And I'm doing a series of audiobooks, which I love. I love audiobooks. It's tiring because you've got nobody else to bounce off. It's just you, as you know from what you do. But it's a great joy, especially if the book is exciting and fun.
Jenny, if listeners would like to come to London and take part in one of your tours, what's the easiest way they can connect with you and make that booking?
Brilliant. Thank you, Andrew. Well, my website is www.astimegoesbylondon.com, or they can get me on social media. I've got As Time Goes By London on Instagram. I've also on Instagram as me, and people can ping me a message. And if there isn't a tour there that they fancy, I do write bespoke tours. So if people say I've got a particular interest in the Blitz, let's say, I mean, I can write a tour for that as long as I've got enough time to do it. So that's the way really to contact me.
That's all the details. And I must just say, it's been lovely to see your cat in the background who's been wandering around. Our listeners won't be able to see, but what's his or her name?
Well, there's Albie, after Albus Dumbledore, named by my daughter, in Harry Potter. He's a stripy tabby, and Letty is a black and white, and they're both rescues. They're only about 5 months old. They're rescue kittens from the RSPCA, and they're fabulous. They're great fun.
Letty, Albie, and perhaps most importantly, Jenny Funnell. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute delight.
Well, it's been a pleasure too for me, and thank you so much for inviting me.
You must remember this. A kiss is still a kiss. A sigh is just a sigh. The fundamental things apply as time goes by. And when two lovers woo, they still say I love you. On that you can't rely. No matter what the future brings as time goes by. Moonlight love songs, never out of date. Hearts full of passion, jealousy and hate. Woman needs man, and man must have his mate that no one can deny. It's still the same old story, a fight for love and glory, a case of do or die. The world will always welcome